You're standing in line for coffee, and while everyone else is checking their phones, you're busy rewriting the ending of a conversation from 3 years ago. Or you're staring at a screen, but you're actually winning a Nobel Prize for a speech you just composed in your head. That mental disconnect is both brilliant and exhausting. If any of that made you smile, good, because there is something that happens inside a very specific kind of mind that almost never gets talked about with real precision. It starts to feel less like a habit and more like a place where you actually live. What's actually happening neurologically when you do this? Your brain has a network, the default mode network, that activates specifically when you're not focused on the outside world. When you stop paying attention to what's in front of you, this network lights up and starts generating you. Your memories, your fears, your fantasies, your rehearsed conversations, your imagined futures. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. But in some people, that network doesn't just activate occasionally. It becomes the preferred setting. The brain starts treating internal simulation as more rewarding than external reality. And that's a significant shift from the baseline. Because once that happens, the real world starts to feel thin, flat, like something is missing from it. What researchers have found is that this shift tends to happen gradually, almost invisibly. It's not a decision, it's a drift. The internal world doesn't announce itself as a replacement. It just keeps being slightly easier, slightly safer, slightly more satisfying than whatever is happening outside. And the brain, like any system, follows the path of least resistance. Eli Sommer, a clinical psychologist at the University of Haifa, formally identified this pattern in 2002 and called it maladaptive daydreaming, a term that still doesn't fully capture what it feels like from the inside, but it's the strongest framework we have. What Professor Sommer found is that maladaptive daydreaming isn't just distraction. There were people spending hours, sometimes most of their waking day, inside narratives they had built entirely inside their own minds. Detailed worlds, recurring characters, storylines that evolved over months and years. And almost all of them had one thing in common. The fantasy world gave them something the real world hadn't. It wasn't escapism in that lazy, dismissive way people use the word, as if you're just dodging your responsibilities. It's more that the imagined scenarios tend to give people control, emotional resolution, or a version of connection that felt safe in a way real relationships hadn't been. In your mind, you can toss a fake conversation, you can rewind it, you can make the other person finally understand in a way the actual human in your life never quite managed to. And the problem, and eventually there is one, is that the brain starts to learn that emotional needs can be met internally. And once that learning becomes strong enough, stepping back into the friction of real life starts to feel genuinely worse than staying in. Real people are unpredictable. Real conversations don't follow the script you wrote. Intimacy is frightening and slow, and it involves sitting with uncertainty for a long time. The dream never disappoints you that way, so you keep going back, and people don't expect it. It's not about being creative. Some of the most imaginative people in the world don't do this at all. And some people who have never written a word of fiction do it compulsively every single day. It's not about intelligence either. Research suggests that high absorption, the personality trait linked to deep, immersive focus, is a factor. This means the people most prone to this tend to be the same people who get completely lost in music or who can't watch a film without feeling genuinely wrecked afterward. They feel everything more intensely, so they build a room where they could feel things on their own terms. And then there's the more damaging part, the shame spiral. When you're doing this, when you've been 30 minutes deep in a scenario where you're finally saying the thing you could never say at 14, you know on some level that time is passing. You know, somewhere in the back of your mind, that the world kept moving while you were gone. And surfacing brings with it this strange emotional aftertaste. Hard to name, but very easy to feel. When there's often a specific moment, right when you come back, where you look at the clock and realize the gap. And for a second before the shame fully arrives, there's just this quiet disorientation. Like stepping out of a cinema into daylight and forgetting, briefly, which world is the real one. And then the judgment comes, not from anyone else, from you. You already know what you were doing. You already know how long you were gone. And the cruel part is that the shame doesn't push you toward the real world. It pushes you back under. Because the one place where that judgment disappears, where no one is watching and nothing is wasted, is exactly the place you just came from. So you go back not because it feels good anymore, but because it feels like the only place where the shame stops. And before you consciously decided anything, well, you're already halfway back under. So the cycle feeds itself. Shame fuels the need deepens the habit, and the habit starts taking up more and more of the space where your real life is supposed to be happening. But that doesn't make this inherently a flaw. Not even slightly. People who develop this pattern are, statistically, people who at some point needed an exit door that the real world wasn't providing. Maybe their home wasn't safe, or they were chronically lonely in environments that were supposed to feel warm. Maybe they were a little too sensitive for the particular world they landed in, and this was the most creative, least destructive way their nervous system found to cope. So the daydreaming wasn't the problem itself, it was the solution to one. The real question is simply whether it's still working for you now, or whether it started costing you something. And this is where I want you to stop and think for a second. Some people who arrive at this point will immediately jump to trying to fix it, as if the goal is to eliminate the inner world entirely. But that's not what the research points to. And honestly, it doesn't make a lot of psychological sense. The goal isn't to become someone who never disappears inside their own head. The goal instead is to figure out what the act of disappearing is doing for you, and then start, slowly and probably a little clumsily, to build some of that into reality. What does the imagined version of connection give you that you're not letting yourself ask for out loud? What does the fantasy version of resolution give you that you're not letting yourself actually pursue? What is that scenario rehearsing that you're too afraid to live for real? Those aren't rhetorical questions. They're probably the most honest ones you can ask yourself, because the inner world doesn't lie about what you need. It just shows it to you in a place where it feels safe to want it. It seems like an impressive adaptation, doesn't it? The fact that you can build entire worlds inside your own mind, with emotional nuance, narrative coherence, and characters that feel real, is a remarkable capacity. Genuinely remarkable. People who experience this most intensely are often sitting on an enormous amount of inner richness that simply never found the right outlet, or the right person, or the moment of safety it needed to exist in the real world. The tragedy isn't that they imagined so deeply, it's that somewhere along the way, they decided that depth was only safe when it was invisible. It seems like an impressive adaptation, doesn't it? The fact that you can build entire worlds inside your own mind with emotional nuance, narrative coherence, and characters that feel real is a remarkable capacity, genuinely remarkable. People who experience this most intensely are often sitting on an enormous amount of inner richness that simply never found the right outlet, or the right person, or the moment of safety it needed to exist in the real world. The tragedy isn't that they imagined so deeply. It's that somewhere along the way, they decided that depth was only safe when it was invisible. If you watched this whole video and felt that kind of quiet recognition, not the kind that's just interesting, but the kind where you had to remind yourself to breathe, I just want you to know that nothing in you needs to be fixed. You adapted quietly, privately, in a way no one saw and no one gave you credit for. Most people don't even realize they're doing it. If you genuinely enjoy this kind of content and want to help me reach more people who might need to hear this, consider subscribing, turning on the notification bell, and leaving a like to support the channel. It means more than you know. See you.